welcome to Let's Play Gran Turismo 2, episode 60. Alrighty then. 6 endurance events are down, and there is still one that remains. And well, I said to myself I was wanting to do this, and so I thought about what car it was that I was going to use for this event, and well, I eventually decided I was going to use this one, my Ford GT40, because I want to be traditional, and also because essentially I want to win this event driving in the 60s. So I am in my Golf liveried Ford GT40 with the number 6, the same one that notably won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in '69, and officially overall we are now going to head over to the race events to get on with our 7th and final endurance event of the game, which is the Rome 2-hour endurance, for what is also our first timed event in the Gran Turismo series, considering this event would return in GT3 along with there also being the 2 hours of Trial Mountain, and also 300 grand if we can win this race, and hopefully we can. So, this is officially our first timed event of the Gran Turismo series, and also the first time we do not have to worry about these AI going the full distance in order for us to officially be complete in a race, because this is where we actually get to win by a lap in these races, essentially. I'll go into full details when we go further along, but yeah, here we go. Our last endurance event of the game, and it takes place in Rome. May our motor-powered chariots commence. Or may our engine-powered chariots commence. As I am now trying to make my way past the Vector M12, I think that is, the LM edition. And holy shit, we have another GT40 in this event. 2 Ford GT40s in this event, and they're both exactly the same car. As I am now suddenly up into the lead, unsurprisingly. And well, I couldn't keep my eyes on what other cars were in this field, so I do apologise if I missed those, but I will officially be able to give an insight on those, on what cars are in this field as we trotted along, but I was able to capture 3 of them at least, as we have a Ford GT40 in this event, a racing modified Vector M12, or the racing homologation of the M12 I should say. And we also have a Nissan R390 in this event as well, as I have just completed my first lap here in Rome, and where I'm probably predicting, if I can only stop probably about once or twice, possibly even 3 times, dependent on how my tyre management goes. I would say at the most I will presumably complete around about probably 88, possibly even 89 laps if I can do well with the mileage. And also, if you're wondering why it says 99 up there, well, 99 laps is essentially the maximum number of laps you can do during a race, and well, personally, overall, that doesn't really matter, because essentially the clock itself basically tells you when you are complete, when you have essentially reached the 2-hour limitation, which is essentially the maximum amount of time you can have in this sort of endurance event. So you basically just have to set as many laps as you can within the 2 hours and hope of course that if it is possible you can emerge with the W. And fortunately, for me at least, so far with most of these, I have managed to eventually emerge victorious. So, I thought about what car I was wanting to use for this event, and well, I eventually decided in the end that, well, you know, why not? I'll give the GT40 a shot, and if all goes well, then officially I'll be complete. And that's essentially where I am now. As I am now completing my 3rd lap here in Rome, and where officially I shall only have about probably another hour and 56 minutes to go. So essentially overall, as soon as the clock has surpassed the 2-hour limit on a certain lap, that will officially be your final lap for the race. And well, it looks as though at the moment, like I have been doing with all the other endurance events, the rubber banding in this event is not proving to be as strong in the endurance events as it is in the other series. And it's not necessarily because I have an overpowered car, but it's mainly because officially excuse me, as I just had a little burp there, but yeah. So you basically have to complete as many laps as you can within the 2-hour limit, and then as soon as you have completed the amount of laps you can do over the course of 2 hours, then essentially overall that is officially when your race will be complete. But meanwhile at the moment, I am currently extending my advantage over the nearest pack, whilst I have also noticed that the other pack is further back, and I would imagine it will not be too much longer before I overlap the 2 back markers in this event, as of which, at the moment, of course, I would say I'm doing very well in my blue and orange Golf liveried GT40. Where I'm very much on course to setting pretty much another PB over my previous one, and indeed I do, as my quickest lap time is now a 1 minute 17.772. As it now looks like we're having a pass for 2nd or 3rd. I'm probably going to be likely to assume it's essentially the R390 probably passing the Vector M12 for 2nd, I would imagine, but I won't know until I have officially overlapped them, and then I can officially determine what the overall standings are compared to where I am. But yeah, as soon as I have completed this event, I will have officially completed the longest events in the game, and now I can head back, of course, to focus on some of the shortest events once again. As I can probably tell very well that my patience at the moment in this event is definitely not running out. It's more likely to be building up at the moment compared to the way these AI are going, because I would imagine most of them have probably run out of patience up to this point. But yeah. So I am on my 7th lap, of course, and essentially overall this is pretty much the only event where you can officially lap the entire field and classify them as finishers in this event. Now, I'm trying to think about a simple way to explain this, and that's essentially what I'm trying to do presently, but okay, so you can basically lap the entire field in this race, and yet they of course will officially be classified as finishers, even if you have officially lapped pretty much every other AI competitor in this event, and officially overall, this is the only event to which you do not have to wait for these AI to finish in terms of delta time, because if you have overlapped the AI in this event, and I'm sure I probably will sooner or later in this event, then essentially overall you will have probably noticed that if you have done these sorts of events before, then obviously it is officially the only event where you can actually overlap the entire field and not have to wait for them to finish in terms of full delta time over the scheduled race distance. I think I've explained this about as clearly as I can, but obviously it would just be dependent on knowing, of course, if I will be fully successful in years to come. And hopefully I shall, but meanwhile, for the time being, I am currently going very well in this race at the moment, very well indeed, and as I have been doing with all the other endurance events I have done, I've been absolutely decimating the field, essentially. At least I think I have. And well, I would imagine if I get lucky, then all I'll really need to make is about either probably 3, maybe even 2 stops throughout this race, dependent on how long my patience will be with the tyres. Considering I have basically managed to take tyres up to the point of them eventually becoming completely shredded, which is essentially what I was able to do at both Grand Valley, essentially at both Grand Valley and at Laguna Seca, because even though obviously this course is definitely not as hard on tyres as Grand Valley is, essentially overall I have noticed, of course, that at the very least, I probably should be able to take myself up to probably at least somewhere under 20 laps, maybe even 21 laps, if I am fortunate at the most. Because the way it looks at the moment, I would say I am very much on course to winning this race. And as far as I know, I think the GT40 is currently battling with the Vector, because I'm fairly certain it's probably the R390 that is up into the second position at the moment. So I would imagine the Vector is probably battling with the GT40, the other GT40 of course, but not my one. And the Nissan R390 I think is in second position at the moment, but as for whoever is at the back of the field, I honestly couldn't tell you, but as soon as we get up to those AI, then that will pretty much be the point of when I shall tell you who is at the back of the field. Meanwhile, 11 laps have nearly been completed for me. At the present time, in just under a quarter of an hour, which is precisely 15 minutes. And so, I have completed 11 laps so far, and I would imagine at the very least I'll probably be able to go presumably another 74, possibly even 75 laps if I am fortunate with the tyre wear, but obviously I don't want to go too long into this race, because I would imagine near the end of the race, if I am more than a lap clear of the rest of the field, then that is essentially when I will start backing off in terms of my overall pace. But anyways, 15 minutes are down and there is still another 1 hour and 45 minutes to go in terms of Delta time before I am officially complete with this event. So we are now up to the completion of lap 17, as I've now also set a new best lap time, which is a 1 minute 17.766, precisely 6 thousandths quicker than my previous PB, which I did not think I was going to do on worn tyres. Well, particularly worn tyres, I should say, because I was not expecting that to be the case, but oddly enough, in a way it is. And oh crap, yep, I seriously fucked up there. But at the very least, I am pretty much well out in front at the moment. As I can see, the R390 is only just entering the first of the Colosseum corners. Meanwhile, I of course am just extending my interval. At the present time, everything appears to be okay, as I am pretty much about, I would probably say, I would pretty much say I am presumably about half a lap clear in this event from my nearest challenger, which I'm going to assume is the Nissan R390, who is the second placed car because, well, obviously he's a prototype. And well, in third position at the moment, I think it's still the Vector M12 with the GT40 running in fourth. But I wasn't able to catch what other cars were in this event, and I do apologise for that, considering obviously it will probably take me a while to catch up to them, and then as soon as I do, that is officially when I shall be able to give you the delta times of what exactly is where. So, coming up to completing my 14th lap in this event, and at the moment I am going very well. I am managing my tyres pretty well at the moment in spite of the spin I had on the previous lap. I'm still able to keep these tyres under control, and obviously the spin was my mistake, as I am still continuing to make mistakes at the moment, but fortunately, for me at least, with the rubber banding not being as strong in the endurance races as it is in other races, that's essentially what has actually been making me feel a bit more comfortable in this event. But anyways, I am now up to lap 15 in this event. So, at the moment it looks like everything is going pretty much just as I planned it would, even though I still have about another hour and 40 minutes to go until this race is officially complete. And I would say, for the moment, it is quite likely that I will probably overlap the entire field, and oh fuck. And that is the second time I have spun. Because another thing I've discovered with this car is that, well, even though it's very easy to corner, it's also very easy to spin, because, you know, rear-wheel drive. Because, you know, rear-wheel drive, and also with it being a manual transmission, also a 5-speed. But yeah, I have discovered this thing is very easy to spin if you upset the balance. And that's essentially what I have already done twice, which is more or less what I was expecting to happen, because I never do expect these machines to be easy to control, as already it looks like two cars are pitting. Looks like both the Vector and the GT40 are in the pits, presumably because they are on the wrong tyres, or simply because they've been pushing too hard, but anyways. I too will have to pit eventually. Considering I would imagine my rear tyres will not be likely to hold up much longer. And obviously, essentially overall for the two previous races I did, it was mainly the front tyres which took most of the wear, and I was eventually able to keep going because I still had some mileage on the rear tyres, and that was essentially what kept me going for about fucking 25 laps at Laguna Seca, and I think it was about, what, 23 laps at Route 5, as far as I know, in terms of mileage. Well, yeah. But, you know. Yeah, so, you know. I'm basically just going to do my usual strategy. The strategy that I managed to pull off at the 3 previous races, and that is essentially wear my tyres down to the point of where they shall go no further. And if I am successful, then we shall know the score by the end of the race. But anyways, I think as soon as I probably get down to the final 10 minutes of this event, I will probably be easing off the throttle and presumably slowing down to see if I can reach the 2-hour mark by the time I have reached my final lap for this event. But anyways, I have managed to complete 17 laps on this set of worn tyres, so there are definitely some signs of wear on my rear tyres, but my front tyres are still going, and that is important, for me at least, in order for me to keep myself going, as it looks like it's now the Nissan R390 that has come into the pits after only 17 laps, and I'm assuming the AI are probably running on racing medium tyres, I would suspect, whilst I am running on the hard tyres, which are clearly more durable for these events. I have of course made the correct decision, and as to whoever is in the pits right now, I probably could not tell until they exit. But for the moment at least, I'm managing my tyres quite well for the moment, and everything is more or less going the way I want it to, unless I do that. And yep, that is the R390 that has just emerged from the pits. Considering, I would assume these AI are probably running on either the racing medium tyres or they're running on the soft tyres, essentially, from what I can speculate. But at the moment at least, my patience is still quite strong, and I am very much waiting until my front tyres can go no further, and that is essentially how long it shall be for when I have ultimately decided over what car I'm going to use next. But meanwhile, so the R390 pitted in a lap after the M12 and the GT40. Well, that of course is very much my clone GT40. And to whoever is strategically in 5th and 6th at the moment, I honestly couldn't tell because I was unable to see what cars they were on the start, but I will be able to correct myself as soon as I have seen what cars they are. And my front tyres are literally screaming at the moment, just not wanting to go any further, but I'll basically keep it going until I know my rear tyres are shredded. But quite surprisingly, my front tyres are actually going very well at the moment. They certainly haven't worn down as quickly as I thought they were going to go down, but if it is possible, I may be able to do what I did at Laguna Seca, and that's basically just go about as long as I can on a set of rubber if I know there is still some durability left in the front tyres, which is essentially what I'm going to go for. If there is any shot of me going for a reasonable number of laps, just to put myself in the position giving myself the advantage, as I am now officially a lap ahead of the Nissan R390, who recently pitted. and I wouldn't have thought of him to be running near the back of the field, but I'm assuming he must be on a different strategy compared to what both my clone, compared of course to what my twin GT40 as well as my, sorry, not that, but anyways. So, the R390 at the moment is currently running at the back of the field, but I'm likely to speculate he must have been the last of his AI to pit, but again, I could be wrong, because oddly enough there have been times of course where a certain car has been running at the back of the field and yet eventually they have managed to prove themselves by slicing their way back up to the front of the field, but still cannot overlap the R390 due to my rear tyres being very worn up to this point, but again, I am managing these tyres very well at the moment. I think at the moment I'm being very brave on these rear tyres. I can probably go up to about 25 laps if I am fortunate, and if I know my durability will stick with me for the final stint, and that is officially the first time in this event I have spun on worn tyres, but I'm still prepared to go another lap unless I know the tyres are completely shredded, and if I am fortunate I should be able to run about probably 24, maybe even 25 laps on this set of boots, but I wouldn't think so because my rear tyres are completely shredded. So I think now probably is the best time for me to pit because, well, the wear has been taken in on my rear tyres and, well, I think I've gone a bit too long on this stint probably, but again, I could be wrong because I have often proven myself wrong before under these sorts of circumstances, and obviously if it is possible I should be able to eventually come back from it, but it looks like my rear tyres are dead, so I think I will pit in this lap because most of the wear this time has been on the rear tyres, not on the front tyres. And oh fuck me. Okay, these tyres aren't holding on much longer, so I'm just gonna pit in now. Because I might as well. Just sipping my water. Just to keep me going, and now I shall get going again. And I do rejoin in second, but essentially I don't think that will bother me too much because obviously I did manage to go long enough to put myself on a reasonable strategy, and that has officially classified that since I managed to complete 23 laps on my previous set of tyres, that essentially does prove that I will be able to go for about as long as presumably that does assume, of course, that essentially I will be able to go up to about lap 46 before I need to pit again, or at least by the time I have completed 46 laps. on this circuit, but I think that has officially opted that, well, for this race, if my calculations are correct, I should be able to go for probably 3 stops in this event if I know I don't damage the tyres too much on pure pace alone. But I was more or less predicting that essentially, since the Rome circuit has one of the longest pit lanes in the game, obviously, I would have assumed, of course, I would probably rejoin in second, but again, it doesn't really matter because I still end up taking the lead anyway. And obviously, dependent on what cars are in the field for this race and also which ones I compete against, that's essentially when I try to be traditional. But anyways, I am on my 25th lap now, coming up towards the completion of that lap, of course, and to presumably see if it's possible for me to improve on my PB, even though it won't be on this lap. But I think from here, this is officially where I shall start to push myself on improving my lap times. But as far as the race itself is concerned, I'm fairly confident I probably will be able to win this without too much trouble, from what I can empathise. But meanwhile, further back, I wouldn't have thought of that to be the case, but anyways. I'm now heading down the stretch, as I now set a new best. Sector 3 time, I think that is, because pretty much all the tracks in this game have 4 sectors, and I would imagine this probably will be quick enough for a new PB, and indeed it is. It is officially over a second quicker, as my best lap time is now a 1 minute 16.6. The speed of precisely 275 kilometers an hour, which I would imagine strategically is around about probably about 165, 166 miles an hour, I think. But of course, I could be wrong, because there is a considerable difference between kilometers and miles. Even though obviously the speed isn't any faster, it's just a bigger number. But anyways, I am now on my 27th lap of this event, and I am now once again starting to pull away from the field. Up to this point, and there is still a likeliness I should be able to overlap the entire field before the day is done, because I still have about an hour and 23 minutes left on the clock before I am officially complete with this event. And then as soon as I am complete, of course, with the endurance events, I can move on to the one-make events. And just looking to see if the sun is coming out, and it could very well be, but again, I could be wrong. Whilst I am officially 28 laps up to the completion of 28 laps here at the Rome circuit, as it has taken me just over 38 minutes to get this far. Meanwhile, at the moment, it looks like everything at the present time is currently showing me what needs to be shown. As I am now officially 29 laps complete. Whilst I have noticed, of course, that essentially whoever is at the back of the field, I'm probably doubtless in saying it's not the R390, but again, there are the possibilities of saying that my statistics and lap charts are probably outdated, but 30 laps are on the board, and officially I am just waiting to see how long it will be before one of my tyres becomes shredded again. But anyways, as I am constantly just being disturbed inwards and outwards because I do not get a room to myself, unfortunately, as much as I would really like to. I just have to live with those fucking disturbances that surround me. And I just do that because obviously I'm essentially just telling this car not to be a prick, essentially, but at the very least, I am pulling out a margin to the rest of the field. Fuck. But oh, I am yawning. I still have to keep going for about another hour and 18 minutes, and then as soon as I have completed those laps, that is when I shall be declared complete. Because oddly enough, I've been awake for more than 3 hours, and yet coincidentally I'm still yawning. Probably because of how I'm doing this, but anyways. "31 laps are now on the board for me, as I am now pretty much about less than half a lap clear of the Vector M12, whilst the rest of the field is still very much yet to be decided in this event. Meanwhile, I am just continuing to extend. Pretty much all the time now, I'm extending. So, the 30-second lap here, of course, in Rome, and I am still very much gradually just extending my interval to these AI, and still continuing to give myself an advantage that I shall negotiate with. But anyways, 32 laps are down in the matter of just less than a quarter of an hour, and then by the end of this lap I will have officially completed about 33 laps in just... I will have officially completed about 33 laps in the course of just over 3/4 of an hour, but meanwhile, at the present time, everything at the moment is more or less going the way I want it to. But anyways. So, 33 laps are completed in just under 3/4 of an hour, as I now surpass the 3/4 of an hour mark, which is 45 minutes. So, essentially, overall, as for the number of laps I will complete in about an hour, I would say it'll be probably about 42, maybe even 43 laps the way I'm currently going, but the advantage I have is tyre mileage, and essentially overall that is very much what could probably win me this race. Where I will very much be likely to overlap every other opponent, but as for the second placed car, that may become a destiny. Because even though victory at the moment is probably going to become a certainty later on in this race, the one thing I cannot guarantee is that I will overlap every car in the field, because, well, that ain't happening. I don't think. But again, I have managed to overlap every other car in the field at least once or twice, and the proud as I might be, it is still the R390 that is at the back of the field, officially. So the Nissan R390 is officially at the back of the field here in Rome, whilst I of course am just coming up to overlap them once again, this time on fresher rubber, and hoping of course that this time I can actually achieve overlapping the R390, and not just by doing it under the default circumstances, which is essentially by him pitting. But anyways. Oh shit. I thought for sure I was a little bit too wide there on the exit, but surprisingly I was not. And I'm on the outside, and oh, okay, it is by default. The R390 has now pitted. It was officially the car at the back of the field, and I'm assuming the reason for that is because, well, he must have the worst tyre mileage of all of us, but fortunately, for me at least, This circuit is definitely not as hard on tyres as Grand Valley is, because fucking hell, that course is hard on tyres, and it can easily just chew them up and then spit them out again. Which is essentially what Grand Valley did to my racing tyres. It basically just chewed them up like chewing gum and then just suddenly spat them out again. By one circumstance or another, but meanwhile, I think it's safe to say I am officially a lap clear of the R390 by now, and potentially overall, it looks like from here I am very much on course to potentially securing a win here in Rome, as I am closing in on the rest of the field, but again, it's only really about probably 10 laps or so before my tyres start to act up again, and then when they do, obviously that is when I shall need to pit again. But anyways, that is for the tense of the future, and this is the tense of the present. So still driving good, everything going very well at the moment. And officially we are now 37 laps complete on the board. So 37 laps are on the board, and that is in the matter of just 50 laps. Everything more or less going the way I want it to in terms of my mileage, and as for everything else at the moment, we'll just have to wait and see. But I am closing in on this pack here, and I'm assuming the one leading them is the Vector, but whoever is at the back of this field, I probably won't know until I can get a glimpse at the car, but the R390, and this is the later model of the R390, is currently running at the back, and I am closing in on the field here. I would imagine it won't be too long before I overlap them, although it will just depend on knowing, of course, how long it will be before most of them pit. Considering obviously I overlapped the R390 by default when I overlapped him, and officially overall 38 laps are on the board, and for me at least, at the moment I am very much on course to winning once again, as I almost spin out of control once again at the same corner. Because even though this car may only be 40 inches high, essentially overall, for a car that has very low downforce, it can still be very easy to skid this thing on worn tyres. But I have managed to save it, at least I think I have, as I am now up to the completion of lap 39. matter of just less than 53 minutes. Okay. So, I think everything at the moment is more or less going the way I'm expecting it to, as I am now on my 40th lap here in Rome. Everything is going very well at the moment, and it shall only be a matter of time before I overlap the entire field, and then when I do, that shall officially be when I have proven that it is possible to overlap the entire field in the endurance events, which is essentially what I have managed to achieve in pretty much all the other events in terms of their length and longevity. But for me at least, I am now officially virtually less than a lap ahead of the rest of the field, and it's only really a matter of time until I overlap these remaining cars, which is essentially what I am likely to do, but for the moment, everything is currently good. But anyways, up to the completion of lap 41, everything is more or less going the way I'm expecting it to do, as I am officially now 55 minutes into this event, and officially it looks like from here I am on course to completion, as of which I am now very much putting myself in the position of now completing 41 laps and closing in on the field rather rapidly at the moment, or the rest of the field, as of which I am trying to see, of course, what other cars are in this event, since I figured 4 of them were a Vector M12, another GT40, and also an R390, but as for the other 2 cars that are in this field, I honestly don't know, but I would imagine with these tyres I could probably go about another 4 laps on these tyres, and then essentially overall that is officially when it shall be pit stop number 2. But I am closing in on the field, trying to see who is at the back of this field. As I can see, there is a GT40 here with a Vector M12, and it looks like they're both overlapping an older R390 GT1, but as to whoever is in second place, they must be doing a good job. And I am close to overlapping both the GT40 and the Vector up to this point, since I do have the default of using a extended strategy on my tyres, as I am now officially coming up to overlap the Vector now for the first time in this event, as I am very much on course to overlapping the entire field before the end of the race. But obviously I'm on worn tyres, so it's not going to be long before I have to pit again, even though I am fairly confident I can still go about another 3 laps on these tyres before, by process of elimination, I have to pit again, but at the moment, of course, I'm having fun. And not just because I'm overlapping the field, but, you know, I am actually having fun at the moment. And so, 44 laps I am now coming up to complete. And presumably, as far as I know, this will officially be the lap which determines how long I will be able to go in this race. Potentially even 45 laps as soon as I pass the hour mark, but... Oh, fuck me. That is a wall. And it looks like... the two Americans are closing in on me to get their laps back as a result of me doing that, but somehow it has not dented my performance too much, as of which my performance has not become as fucked as I thought it was going to be, in spite of just literally saying how much hell I gave my left front fender. Pretty much my left side in particular, I should probably say, but anyways. With this being a race car from the 60s, it's usually likely, of course, that most of them are very difficult to control. And essentially overall, that is precisely what I think this is proving, but anyways. I would say overall, I will probably be able to complete around about 89 laps on this course as soon as I pass the hour mark, and then obviously that will officially be what determines how many laps I will complete on this circuit. So, if my maths is correct, and also if everything goes more or less to plan the way I want it to, then I should be able to complete around about 89 laps, but for the moment at least, I'm just holding on to a threshold over both the M12 and the GT40, and to whoever the second place car may be, they are doing a very good job. Because I'm probably likely to speculate it's potentially a Toyota GT1, but again, I could very much be wrong with what the model is, because if it is not the R390 that is up at the front, then it's got to be something else, I'm sure of it. But anyways, I have not managed to spin on this lap, and essentially overall, this is now the lap where I officially make my second pit stop, because my rear tyres are pretty much shredded again. And almost spinning there, but managing to catch the back end before it started fucking fishtailing on me. I was able to get it back. Just pretty much managing to catch this car whenever it tries to spin, and officially this is now the lap where I make my second stop, because my rear tyres are dead again. So rounding out the final corner, and oh okay, it doesn't matter because the Vector just pitted in as well. As of which, I would imagine it would not be long before I overlap the Vector once again. Considering obviously he did come into the pits around about the same time I did, but it doesn't really matter too much because I'm virtually a lap ahead of the rest of the field as things stand now, as I am now officially starting my third stint in this race, as to where I will probably go up to the end of lap 69, and then as soon as I have completed 69 laps, that is when I shall make my third and final pit stop of the day. So, more or less just being as tactical as I usually am under these circumstances, and usually just wanting to predict that I'm in it to win it, essentially, but as to whoever will secure second in this race remains to be seen, considering obviously the Vector is virtually a lap down, as I am now overlapping him on fresh rubber, as it now looks like the GT40 is in the pits, or unless he's going onwards, but whoever is in the pits now, I'm uncertain of knowing who it is, but I think it looks like a Nissan R390, unless there are two of those in this event, but I don't think an R390 is actually in second in this event, considering I saw one of them in last, but again, I could very well be confused with there being two Nissan R390s in this event. That could very much be the case, of course, with this particular sort of event, but again, I shall only know what the final results turn out to be when everyone has crossed the line. After the 2-hour mark, as I am virtually about a lap ahead of the rest of the field, and I am going to speculate on this, and I may only be speculating, but in terms of my speculation, I think there is about, presumably, 2 GT40s with 2 98 models of the Nissan R390, and I do mean the 98 model, with a Vector M12 and probably also a 97 R390. But whoever is up at the front, I'm going to be likely to speculate it's assumingly a Toyota GT1. Unless it's the older R390, and indeed it is the older R390, but anyways. As near as makes no difference, as near as it may be, it really doesn't make any difference on knowing who is officially in the second position, but I am likely to speculate it could be this R390, but again, I won't know for sure until the results are classified, but for the moment at least, everything is more or less going according to plan at the present time. I have not made any mistakes mileage wise. I've gone about as long as I could on the rear tyres, and now I just very much have to see if I can do that again one more time, and then for the rest of the race I can just focus on getting in as many laps as I can. As I'm trying to overlap him from the outside, and I managed to do it successfully. I've got the Nissan on the outside, and I have now pretty much overlapped the entire field. Up to this point, I would say. But in the meantime, I am very much on course to winning this event quite easily, since I am now virtually a lap ahead of the rest of the field. But in the meantime, I shall just focus on getting my laps in, and then as soon as the 2-hour mark is reached, that is officially when this race will be complete. As we now only have about less than 50 minutes left on the clock, and then, about less than 52 minutes on the clock now, as of which, as soon as this event is completed, that is officially when this race shall be completed. But meanwhile, at the moment, it looks like I am very much on course to undoubtedly win this race by a lap. And I do say a moment as in momentarily, because anything can still happen in this race, but for now at least, I am able to relax. But we shall wait and see. So, coming through the corner now once again, just past the Colosseum, to this very much medieval town, I might add. And heading by the Colosseum once again. Now for the 52nd time here in Rome, as I am now heading down the backstretch. And may my 8-cylinder race car win this event in front of the Romans. Since essentially overall this car is basically about as classical as the Romans. Since essentially overall this is basically, if I'm speaking in Roman terms, a horseless carriage and a 4-wheel automobile from the 60s. Which is essentially what this car is, because this car is clearly from the 60s. Also, FYI, this car still remains to be the only American car that's officially won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And I don't just mean, I don't just mean in terms of class. I mean in terms of the 24 Hours of Le Mans in general, because this still remains to be the only American race car that's actually won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. As if I didn't think this was the last model that Ford had officially used to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and oddly enough, the Americans have not officially won the 24 Hours of Le Mans since then. I mean they've won in terms of their classes with the likes of both Ford and Chevrolet in particular, but obviously they haven't officially won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. In terms of overall lap time and also in terms of overall classification, but 53 laps are now on the board, and I am speculating there is probably about another 35 laps yet to be completed in this event, presumably, if all goes well, but we shall know the final classification of this race when we get to it. As of which, for the present time, I am more or less just holding on to the first position by pretty much well over a lap by this point. As it now looks like I'm closing in on another back marker in this event. 54 laps are now complete. And I am going to assume that is probably the newer homologation of the R390 GT1 as far as I can tell. But again, it is only an assumption as to whichever car is at the back. I cannot tell for sure, but again, I will not know until I have passed the car, which is presumably a back marker I have already overlapped in this field, so this would essentially be only about the second time I've overlapped this one, dependent on whatever the hell this car is when I approach it. But it doesn't look like a Nissan. I would say it's probably a bit more like, presumably, a Ford, or probably even a Celine from what I can tell by the rear end, or the rear bumper probably, but I won't know until I have overlapped it, and when I have overlapped it, that is when I can tell you what car that is. Because I am sure... because I am basically about as sure as a Yogi Bear that this is presumably a back marker. But, well, I think it looks like a Celine from what I can tell here, but again, there could be a potential misconception and... oh, okay. Correction, it's actually a Venturi that is at the back of the field. I think that is a Venturi Atlantique from what I can tell, but as for what type of Atlantique it is, but... okay, let me start over. As to what model of the Venturi Atlantique it is, I'm probably going to speculate it's the 600 model, but I won't know for sure considering it is just another LM edition car, but I am certain that is another back marker. Meanwhile, 56 laps are down and I still have about another 44 minutes left on the clock before I can officially clarify this race as being complete. As I am running very wide through there, but fortunately, for me at least, staying cool, doing everything that needs to be done up to this point, as I am now officially a lap ahead of the entire field, basically. So, completing my 57th lap here now in Rome, and officially overall driving very much still the only American car to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and also to win it 4 times on the trot as well, essentially, which is what this car managed to achieve in the north of France for 4 straight years in a row. And everything more or less staying as it is. But anyways, I am pretty much a lap ahead of the rest of the field, and this is what I am predicting the order is going to be for this race in the end. I predict I will probably win by just under 2 laps in this event with the 97 model of the Nissan R390 GT1 in second, pretty much a lap down. Then in the third position, I think it will be the GT40, followed by the Vector M12 LM Edition. Then in 5th place, I speculate it may be the updated homologation of the R390 GT1 in 5th. And then at the back, it will probably be the Venturi Atlantique LM Edition. It could very well be what the order is now, but again, I'm only leading my thoughts down to speculation because I don't know what the final results will be for sure until this race is complete. But at the moment, everything is more or less going as I plan it to. But anyways, heading through the final 2 corners now once again for completing my 59th lap, and now starting my 60th. Pretty much a lap ahead of the rest of the field, and closing in on the updated R390 once again, from what I can gather here. And it more or less looks like I could very well be on course to winning this event by overlapping pretty much half of the field twice, essentially. But I am hoping at the very least I can give myself a reasonable car to win, especially considering I still have to go another 9 laps on these tyres before I make my 3rd and final stop of the day. And I was not expecting myself to overlap the R390 under those sorts of circumstances, but oddly enough I was. And I would have probably assumed, of course, he was being very aggressive, not wanting to go that 2nd lap down, but now that he is, there is pretty much nothing you can do about it. So, 60 laps are now complete, and there is now officially less than 2/3 of an hour on the clock, which is exactly less than 40 minutes to go in this race. And then I am complete with my last endurance event in the game. And as soon as I've done that, I can pretty much focus on the remaining 40% of the game, which is mainly focused on the fucking one-make events, considering they are basically one-make races, but anyways. 61 laps are now on the board, and I still have presumably about another 28 laps left on the board from what I can speculate, but for the moment at least, I would say I am very much the leader of the pack, as of which my Ford GT40 is clearly in first place by 1 lap over the rest of the field. In second place is the 97 model of the Nissan R390 GT1, and I do mean the older model, which is presumably in second. In the third position, I think, is probably the GT40, but it could very well be the Vector, because those two are very evenly matched at the moment. It will be hard to tell which one of those two will emerge with the bronze, as I am now spinning once again. And there go both of the back markers I just put a lap down as a result of my spin, but anyways. Spinning on the same exit again, which is essentially what I've basically been doing mostly throughout this race, but oddly enough I have not been doing it as often as I thought I was going to. Considering obviously this is a race car from the 60s, and well, most of these race cars are very much from the 90s, essentially. Since there is only really me and another GT40, which is pretty much exactly the same car to what I am driving in this event. And of course, I am more or less seeing myself trying to stay 2 laps ahead of both the updated R390 and also the Venturi Atlantique, who are clearly running at the back of the field from what I can tell back here, but I have got my second lap back on them, and I still have about another 6 laps to go before I make my final stop of the day. And then, as soon as I have done that, I can basically just go to the end of the race on worn tyres, basically. Which is essentially what I plan on doing, but if it is possible to go for the win, then that is more or less what I will go for. The win. But for the time being, it looks like I am more or less on course to winning this race, as I think it now looks like the Venturi has overtaken the Nissan, but again, I could very much be wrong with the pixelated imagery because I cannot see who is in front of who. But I think the Venturi has actually overtaken the Nissan for 5th position, as those two are having their sleazy little battle there, but officially by now I have overlapped the entire field. I am precisely a lap ahead of the rest of the field. Unfortunately for me at least, I will not have to wait for them to complete the same number of laps as I do, because they will each be on their own laps, dependent on how long it will be before they finish this race. But meanwhile, at the present time, everything is more or less looking like the way it should, as I'm now officially 64 laps complete in this event, and there is still about another 32 minutes left in this event before we are complete. As I have now completed my 65th lap in this event, everything more or less going the way it should. as I am also trying to talk over the sound effects I hear in the background, but yeah. Just trying to talk over them so that I will not be presumably disturbed, but anyways. We shall keep ourselves going for as long as we can in this event, and pretty much keeping myself more or less in tone with where the AI are running and also where I am running. As it now looks like the Venturi is starting to catch up to me whilst I'm almost losing my voice. And obviously I am quite a bad speaker. Or if we are going to be specific, I am a very bad orator. For these events, I do apologise. And I would say, of course, that I am sorry if my voice is disturbing you, but whatever. It is now up to about half an hour left in this event before we are complete. And so 30 minutes remain on the clock. How many laps will I be able to complete in the remaining 30 minutes? You shall just have to wait and find out. But for now, of course, I'm just going to catch my breath, essentially. My rear tyres are becoming very worn once again, but whilst I'm trying to clear my throat, obviously, I can go one more lap on this set of tyres, and then as soon as I have done that, obviously, that is when I will pit. So, I'm now up to my 69th lap, and still 2 laps ahead of both the Nissan R390 and the Venturi Atlantique, who is very much closing in on me to try and get one of his laps back. For the moment I am disallowing it until I go into the pits, and then as soon as I am in the pits, that is officially when I shall subsequently be completing my 3rd stop of the day, and still not going to let the Venturi go by unless he forces his way past me the way he should probably do it, as my rear tyres are now once again dead. D-E-A-D, dead. The third and final stop of the day comes here in Rome, as I am now very much coming into the pits this lap and having to let the Venturi go by because otherwise I would have missed the pit lane, but fortunately on this occasion I did not. And now it is time for our third and final stop of the day. And this track I would assume probably has the longest pit lane in the game, and also it's certainly one of the tightest as well because of where the corner is, but meanwhile 69 laps are down, and that is how many I have completed in the course of precisely 1 hour, 34 minutes and 15 seconds. Excuse me, as I am still continuing to burp rather a lot because of how much water I'm drinking, but we have only got another 25 minutes left on the clock virtually, as this is very much becoming a tremendous effort for both myself and my 1969 GT40, the one that is actually leading this race and is not just a clone. And it looks like the R390 is now back in the pits. I would speculate, because the Venturi got past the R390 earlier on, and I am assuming that is officially the Venturi that is now up into the 5th position in this race. And so we are edging ever closer to the completion of this event in my GT40, more or less holding on to the advantage to which I am currently within the consumption of. After nearly 71 laps. And so, on the start finish straight now for the beginning of lap number 72, or at least my 72nd lap now, as it very much looks like I am in the clear for winning this event. Unfortunately, until I can officially get my own room, there really is nothing I can do about the sound effects, or at least until I can get a noise cancelling microphone. Then yeah, there really is nothing I can do about the sound effects. I'm really sorry. But at the very least, I am able to get a system and also get my own TV to where I can actually record these things, and, you know, I would suppose, at the very least, that is something, in spite of me not officially getting much else, but meanwhile, there is still about an additional 22 minutes left on the board now, as 72 laps are now officially on the board, and I basically have to wait, of course, for these AI to finish off on the final lap to which they're on when the 2-hour mark has been reached. But meanwhile, as fatigue is once again getting to me after only about 1 hour and 38 minutes, nearly 39 minutes, I might add. At the moment, everything is more or less going the way I'm wanting it to, whilst there is still precisely 21 minutes left on the board. As of which I have a feeling it will potentially be probably 87 laps that I will have completed, potentially 88 at the most if I know I do not have to wait too long for these AI to finish, and fortunately for me at least, I do not. But for the moment, I am more or less enjoying a healthy lead over my nearest challenger, which is the 97 model of the R390 GT1, the original one, and officially there is still about an additional 20 minutes left in this event. So 74 laps are now complete, as I am now up to my 75th lap here in Rome, with there still being precisely 20 minutes remaining. And everything surrounding me is just constantly harassing me at the moment. Pretty much everything is just harassing me. But I can more or less negotiate with this like I can negotiate with anything else. And that is just by trying to ignore it and speak over it without shouting. Which is probably something I will end up doing sooner or later, but at the very least, I can speak over any disturbing sound effects who may be lurking in the shadows, just basically trying to put me to the point of essentially breaking beyond 1,000 decibels, which is essentially what I think it is surrounding me, 1,000 decibels. But anyways, I am now on my 76th lap here in Rome, very much keeping a relatively steady interval to the rest of the field. But I'm not predicting I will overlap the entire field twice in this event, because it is more likely that I will probably overlap them once rather than twice. Even though I may of course be able to potentially overlap them twice, even though essentially overall I've only overlapped half the field twice. But my quickest lap so far on this stint is a 1:16.8, so that is precisely 2/10 of my quickest lap. And I will be trying to see if I can go for a PB, but at the moment I don't think it looks like it. Because I think these tyres are potentially past their best, but again, I will give it a go if I know that is what it takes to complete this. But there is still about over a quarter of an hour left in this race, and then as soon as I have completed this race, that will officially be the endurance event now complete, as I will have basically completed all but one event in the game itself, and that particular event I shall probably reveal after I have completed the one-leg races. And that's not going to be for a while, but for now at least, I am happy to say that I've managed to complete pretty much less than the first 60% of this game, as I now have 77 laps on the board, and coming back now to overlapping my fellow GT40 for the second time in this event. After only 77 laps. Or the GT40 clone, I might add, which is essentially what I think that is. Since we're both driving very much identical cars, but on the inside I go, sliding to the outside, managing to narrowly avoid the wall, but coming back again on the GT40, and we both hit the inside guardrail, but doesn't really matter too much because I'm more or less expecting myself to probably overlap the GT40 rather jubilantly, as it looks like pretty much the entire field up to this point in the race is spread out. But I'm probably willing to assume the Vector recently made a pit stop, unless the Vector is presumably somewhere further up the road, and that's probably what I anticipate, but probably isn't. As of which, at the moment, I'm currently trying to overlap my fellow GT40, and it looks as though this time I have now achieved success. So, I've overlapped most of the field twice now in this event, and I still think there is more to come from this GT40 if I can or cannot overlap the Vector, but at the moment, of course, it looks like my GT40 is very much on course to winning this event, almost undoubtedly up to this point. I will probably win this event, but for the moment at least, I would say my performance at the moment is about as good as it's gonna get. It is virtually about as good as it gets, but we'll wait and see. But anyways, I have now nearly completed 80 laps on this course, and I still have about another 12 minutes to go in this event until I am officially complete. So these are now the updated standings as they are, I allegedly believe at the moment. So, in first place is quite clearly me by nearly 2 laps over the rest of the field at the present time. In second place, as the GT40 is now making presumably his final pit stop of the day, dependent on where exactly the Vector is currently running, but... And... oh, fuck me. Yep, okay. I actually need to concentrate on this, but, well... clearly distracting myself by talking, but anyway. Because, you know, I do it for the commentary. Well, I do it very poorly, but yeah, I do it for the commentary. It's what I do. So, coming round now to completing my 81st lap here in Rome. As for the standings at the moment, well, I am clearly running in the first position at the moment by 2 laps over most of the field, I would imagine. In second place, I believe, is the Nissan R390 GT1, the 1997 model of the R390, essentially the original one, is currently running in second. In third place, I think is probably the GT40, because I have not seen the Vector M12 anywhere near the GT40 recently, so I'm willing to speculate the Vector is probably somewhere further back unless he is just up ahead. But I believe the Vector is currently in 4th unless the Vector is just up the road, in which case he could very well be, but we'll wait and see. And as for the 5th and 6th positions respectively, I would say it is probably the Venturi Atlantique ahead of the 1998 model of the Nissan R390 GT1. But meanwhile, my first lap in the 117s on this stint, or just about a 117 flat, I might add, as it looks like I am closing in on the R390 GT1 now for presumably the second time in this event after only 82 laps. It now looks like I probably will win this event by just about 2 laps. If I can get the job done, then obviously I will have overlapped the R390. And not able to get a toe on the inside. I would have more or less expected the first of the 2 Nissans to go defensive. But I am trying again. I am attempting to make a comeback and put in the second lap down, as I am pushing hard, but not quite hard enough for him to potentially slide. Meanwhile, for the moment, I am 84 laps now onto this event, and if it's possible, I may be able to complete 87, maybe even 88 laps, possibly even 89 if I'm lucky, but the R390 at the moment is having none of it, as I have now finally overlapped him for the second time in this event. And that will officially mean, of course, that if I can stay ahead of the R390, then I will have officially won this event by precisely 2 laps. over the rest of the field. Presumably. But in the meantime, we shall wait and see. As I am now coming through to completing the 84th lap that I have now managed to complete in this race. And I'm very much gonna try and see if I can go for a PB. Which of course is essentially the main reason why I am pushing hard. Because I want to give this a go, goddammit. I want to see if I can actually set a reasonable lap time on worn tyres. Up to this point in the event. Okay, well, more or less say 57.3. And I do not. Okay. Okay, note to self, do not attempt to do that again. Okay, note to self, do not attempt to do that again. But it is quite likely that I will have probably completed about, presumably 88 laps in this event. But for the moment at least, I am very much on course to securing a relatively easy W, since I have now overlapped the entire field twice. And this car is just not letting me control it right now, because of how worn my rear tyres are. Well, I had a feeling that essentially, if I really was going to be making mistakes in this race, then it would have to be in the closing stages of the race. Not in the opening stages, but the closing stages. And I just over-reffed. Who was surprised? Not me. Because, well, up to this point, I can basically pit in again and still win this race by about 2 laps in terms of distance. If I was really that keen to putting the field pretty much 2 laps down, but anyways. I am now on my 87th lap, and if it is possible for me to get through this without sliding again, then I may potentially be able to complete around about 89 laps, if I am fortunate. But at the very least, the only thing I really have to negotiate with is waiting to see how long it will be before the rest of the field finishes this race. As it now looks like my lap times are starting to drop off, more or less because of the wear I have on the rear tyres, but it doesn't really matter too much to me because presumably in this race I only really have to complete about 2 more laps in order to say that I have officially completed this race overall. So by the time I have reached the 2 hour mark, that will officially be my final lap of the race. but we shall wait and see what happens. So, 87 laps are down, and if it is possible, it probably will be fair to say that I am potentially on course to completing 89 laps by the time I reach the 2-hour mark, which means of course I will not have to go any further in terms of in terms of distance and proximity, but heading through the final corner now to officially go onwards to the start-finish straight, as this will presumably be my 89th and final lap of this event, as I am now into the final minute of this event. So, I would imagine the 2-hour mark is only about 40 seconds away, and then as soon as I have reached that 2-hour mark, this will officially mark my final lap of the race by the time the 2-hour mark has been reached. And then when it has, I will be greatly relieved. Well, 15 seconds to go, and then we are done with this event. So, rounding out the final corners now of this lap, and is this the final lap? And indeed it is the final lap of this race. So I will not have to go any further. Yay! And someone else is going to finish as well, but anyways. I have completed 89 laps in this event, and it looks like someone else has just completed this event as well, since they also surpassed the 2-hour mark. And well, I'm going to keep this going because I would imagine it's not going to be long until everyone else has finished. And oh, okay. Oh, okay. I was not expecting that to happen. Oh, okay. Correction. I did have a competitor in this race, and unexpectedly that competitor was actually the Venturi Atlantique. And well, as for the rest of the field, I basically overlapped them. So, unexpectedly, it was the Venturi Atlantique 600 LM edition, which finished in second, only 21.7 seconds behind me. Then, in third place, it was eventually the Nissan R390 GT1, the older model, that was in third, one lap down. Then, in fourth place, it was the Vector M12 LM edition in fourth, also a lap down, along with the GT40 close behind him. And then, at the back, by 2 laps, it was officially the updated version of the Nissan R390 GT1. So, that was actually the closest endurance race I've had in this game, especially considering I wasn't even thinking that the Venturi was actually a potential competitor in this race, but well, it is what it is, I guess. Someone completes the same number of laps as me, and oddly enough, I narrowly win the event as a result. But yeah, there we go. The Rome 2-hour endurance is now complete. Our 7th and last endurance event is now complete, as I am now trying to give myself a reasonable thumbnail for this event. Just trying to see if I can get a reasonable shot of this car, and it looks like I have officially done that. Okay, I'm done. I think I've got myself a reasonable shot there of my GT40. So, 89 laps completed in the end of the Rome 2-hour endurance, and quite surprisingly, I won by only 21 seconds over the Venturi Atlantique, who I did not expect was actually going to be a potential competitor in this event, to actually beating me. So I suppose I actually got lucky with my tyre strategy, or else I could have potentially lost this race, but yeah. So there we go. 2 hours and 9 seconds, and 300 grand for winning, along with me winning by the narrowest margin I have officially had in an endurance event since the special stage Route 11 all-night endurance 2 race from GT1, I believe, which was only a 24-second victory, whereas this one was only 21 seconds, but anyways, there we go. And checking to see if the replay is still too large, and yes it is, unfortunately, but it doesn't matter because I recorded the first lap of the replay whilst I was doing this video, so there is nothing to worry about. It is completely fine, the way I see it. But there we go. The endurance events are now complete, as that was our last endurance event of the game. The Rome Millennium 2-hour endurance race. Our last endurance event is now complete. And now we get to see what prize car we win. And oh, okay. We win another LM edition car. It is officially a Toyota Altezza LM edition that we win. This is nice. This is very nice. Or as it says on the front, a Lexus IS200 LM edition. But oddly enough, it says on here, of course, it's a Toyota Altezza, so yeah, you know, because, well, the cars are both pretty much identical. There really isn't a difference between them, in my honest opinion, but yeah, this is actually a nice car. This car is very nice as the prize car to win for our final endurance event. Very nice indeed. So, we are now 57.07% complete with this game after completing the endurance events, and now we basically need to focus on virtually the next 40% of the game, which is on the one-make races. And how I shall do that, well, it shall basically be anti-clockwise compared to what you would usually see on a compass going northeast southwest, when I'm actually going to go northwest southeast essentially. But yeah, so the Rome 2-hour endurance is now complete, and so next up will be the start of the one-make races, and so until then, stay tuned for more GT2.